A tool is only as powerful as your knowledge of it. So in today's video, we are diving into the Builderius interface so that you can stop hunting down for buttons and start building faster. If you want to follow along, you can spin up a free sandbox at demo.builderius.io. You just have to fill in your information and then a link will be sent to you via email. Then after you've finished the course and you are happy with Builderius and you think you want to go pro, then the links will be in the description for licensing options. This tutorial assumes that you know your way around a basic WordPress install. If you need a WordPress 101, then please let us know in the comments. First, head over to the Builderius dashboard by clicking on the Builderius option in the WordPress sidebar. You'll see the welcome screen with some highlights of the features that you can expect in Builderius. If you scroll down to the bottom, you get to choose which path you want to start with. There are 3 options. The first option is the standard settings, and in the standard settings, you get a CSS framework, that is the Builderius CSS framework, with some demo templates and the demo header and footer components. If you choose the minimal settings, this is the option you choose when you want to bring in your own CSS framework and you are happy to build out everything from scratch. So your own header, your own footer, your own navigation, and everything from scratch. There's no opinion from the builder. But if you are just starting out and you want to have a good, complete template to work with, then you can choose one of our starter sites. The first one is the Architecture Studio, and it brings in the full website with the WordPress data all bundled together. So you have a starter demo site that is completely ready to go. But for this lesson, we're just going to stick with the standard settings. Let's go back to the standard settings, and then I'll just click to install. You can also choose to publish so that it goes live immediately. But let's just go ahead and install. Then we can choose to install with WordPress data or not. The next part to check out is the templates. Builderius isn't a traditional page builder. It's more like a powerful templating system. It creates templates that override your theme's default output, and it will only override the templates that you tell it to. So it is incredibly safe to use on existing live sites. So for example, we have some existing templates that were created in our standard settings. One for pages, for the 404 not found page, for posts, all archives, and the blog index. You can go ahead and create a new template by clicking on the Create Template. It will ask you to choose the template location, so the specific location that you want to override. And then once you choose the location, if you have the Pro version, you can go ahead and even drill it down to be more specific using the advanced settings, and you choose exactly what conditions you want to apply to the template. So now let's go ahead and see the template view. So first we have the active column. This shows if the template is going to be active or not. Then we have the title of the template. If you hover over each of the titles, you can go ahead and edit with Builderius, or you can rename the template. You can choose to set some extra conditions to that template. You can duplicate the template or delete the template. The next column tells you exactly where the template is applied to. So for now, the first template is applied to the pages. The next is the priority, because in some cases, you might have like 2 templates that are affecting the same location. So now how does WordPress know which one to pick? So WordPress will now rely on the priority to pick the right template. The lower the number, the higher the priority. If I want the second template to have the more precedence, all you have to do is go to the settings and you change the priority number to something lower, so maybe 10, and save. Now, this second template will carry more weight, and then it will be the one that will show on all pages. If you don't want to create a singular template that affects all pages, I can go ahead and deactivate this template. Then I'll go to my pages. and I'll go ahead and edit a page with Builderius so that we can go ahead and see how the actual interface of the builder looks like. So I'll click to edit it to Builderius. The Builderius workspace is divided into 3 panels. On the left, we have the settings panel, which changes depending on what is active. On the right, you have the Navigator, which is divided into 3 tabs. The first tab is for your elements tree, so you can go ahead and see all of the elements that compose of the page. Then next, we have the CSS selectors, so all of the different kind of selectors, either elements, classes, complex selectors that we have used to style the current page, or globally, we see the selectors. Then we have the CSS variables. In the center, you have your preview, which is clean and real-time, so it interacts with the elements that you've created. And the nice thing is that when you hover over any element, it tells you exactly what tag is applied to that element. And once you click on it, it highlights the element as well in the Navigator, so they are all synced together. In the top bar, it's also divided into 3 sections. On the left, we start with the Builderius file menu, and that just takes us to different navigation jump points that we have. So you can quickly jump to other pages that we've created with Builderius, other templates, and other components. The nice thing about Builderius is that these components and templates, they don't open up in a new window or a new browser. They open up in the same browser window and just creates a new tab within the workspace. What do I mean? If I click on something like the posts, it opens the posts template within the same builder as a new tab. So I can work on my posts template, add elements that I want. Once I'm done, I go ahead and save it. Then I close out of it, and I can continue working on the initial templates that I created. Next to the file menu is the element inserter. That is what we use to insert a new element onto the canvas. It is divided into different categories which are logically created. So we have the layouts, we have text content, and we have others. So all of them are logically grouped together. And if you're like me, you don't like going through lots of options, you can just search. So if I want to search for a heading, I can get it. If I want to search for a paragraph, I can just quickly get it. And it is keyboard accessible. So I can just press the tab key and the space bar to activate and add the elements to the part that I want. Then the other thing you need to note is if nothing is highlighted in the Navigator and I choose to click an element, so for example a section, it add it as the last element on the canvas. But then now that the container is highlighted, I go ahead and click on the element inserter again, and this time I choose to add something like maybe a div. Because that element is highlighted, it will add it as a child to the highlighted container. So now it becomes a child of the highlighted container. But then what if you want to add multiple elements? Because right now, once you add an element, you can see it immediately switches to the element settings. But what if we want to add multiple elements? Then all we have to do is you highlight the element you need active, which is maybe the container in this case. Click on the element inserter, and then I'll just simply search for what I want, so a div again. And this time, holding down the shift key, you can now click. So now the element has been added as a child, but we still have the inserter open. So I can now add multiple elements. So for example, let's say in the div, I want to add a heading. So hold down the shift key, click on the heading. I want to add a paragraph. Hold down the shift key, click on it. The paragraph has been added, and maybe I want to add a link. So I'll click on the link, and everything has been added to that div without the inserter going off. But if I want to add an element and immediately switch to the element settings page, then I can just click without holding any modifier key. And that's it, I've added the elements. So those are the elements that we've added onto the canvas. Speaking of the elements inserter, at the very right hand side of your page, we have some quick shortcuts. So these are the frequently used elements that are on the page. So we have from bottom, the section, the container, div, heading, paragraph, and so on. So these are elements that we typically use a lot on the page. If you want to add your own custom one into the quick navigation panel, then you simply hover over an element. Once you hover over it, it shows you a star icon, which means that you want to add that element as favorite. So just click on the element, and now it has added it as a favorite option. If you want to remove an element, you simply click on the cog icon at the bottom right-hand corner, and then an X icon appears, and you can go ahead and delete whichever icon you don't need. And that item has been removed. So I can click on the cog icon again to close out the edit. So now we have our element added, and we understand how to add elements onto the page. So now let's go ahead and edit one of the elements, for example, the heading. And that takes us to a standout feature within Builderius, which is universal design. In Builderius, every element shares the same DNA, which means that you can actually convert an element from one element to another because all of the elements have the same settings panel. If you look at the paragraph, it looks exactly like the heading, which looks like the anchor, and so on. So let's start with the heading panel. It always starts with the two tabs. We have the content tab for everything that has to be done within HTML, and the style tab for everything that want to be done within the CSS. So when you're adding a class and styling that class, it goes to the style panel. When you're adding HTML content, HTML attributes, area attributes, and so on, you do everything in the content tab. Starting from top to bottom, we have the HTML tag. You can choose the tag that you want. It has the basic tags that we typically use on the website. And if you see a tag that is not there, you can create it by just simply typing in the search bar. So let's say, for example, a canvas. If I click on it, it creates a canvas element for me. But in this case, I don't want to use a canvas. I just want an H1. The next thing you see is the primary tab. The primary tab contains the content, and then it contains any other extra attributes that are specific to the element. So for example, a heading. The heading can have H1 to H6 tags. So it will appear just right under the content. For something like a paragraph, it will always has the same thing, the HTML tag and the content. But then if there are any special elements that might be needed for that element to work, then that will also be added automatically. And you can always convert your element on the fly. You don't have to delete the element and then recreate a new element. You just simply think, okay, I want to add a new element, and then I have a new element. The other thing that is nice about Builderius, which is unique, is that with Builderius, every element is nestable because they figured out that they should not restrict you in nesting elements. You have to be the one to decide, do you want to nest an element or not? For example, let's say in my heading, I want to have span tags, but I want to be able to style them visually. So all I have to do is, I've clicked on my heading, I go to the elements inserter and I search for the span, and holding the shift so that I can add multiple spans, I'll just click on the span maybe twice and see I have span tags nested within the heading tag. I don't have to first create a div block, then convert that HTML tag on the div block to a heading before I can nest elements. I can nest elements to paragraph tags, to heading tags, to divs, to layout elements, and so on, because every element shares the same DNA and acts the same. So now, coming back to the elements, the next thing we have are attributes. And these are where we put things like our data attributes, our area attributes, and any kind of attribute you want. They are all flexible and they accept dynamic data. So you can always use dynamic data to add values into your attributes. So that's it for the content tab. Then for the style tab is where you add your CSS. And then you have the different headings for the different typical settings that you use. So I can go to the typography, and let's say I want the font size to be 12 rem. You can do that. Or let's say I want the font size to be just 1 rem. You can do that as well. So you can change the styles. You can apply as many styles as you want visually. One nice thing about Builderius again is that the inputs are all unitless. What do I mean? You can add any kind of input that you want. In some page builders, they restrict you that you have to choose a unit first before you add the value. But with Builderius, you can just type any value you want. So for color, I can say I want my color to just be plain red. I want my color to be black. I want it to be a variable. For variables, the shortcut key, just press the hyphen symbol twice, and then you can now search for your variable. So we have color variables. Let me choose a random color, and we get that. So you can use any kind of unit you want in any input. The other nice thing about Builderius is that you can either put your styles visually, like I've done here, or if you are more of a developer, you can write your styles in code, and everything is synced together. There are no magic areas whereby some styles live in code and other styles live in the visual builder. Everything is synced together. So if I go into the code, you can see all of the styles that I applied visually. So I applied the font size, I applied some color and some background color, and everything is in the code. If I change it in the code, so for example, instead of 1 rem, I say I want it to be 3 rem, and I close out the code, I go back to my typography, you see that now it's 3 rem. If I change it here to maybe 3 characters, I go back into the code, it automatically changes to 3 characters. So the UI and the visual are all synced together. So that's it for the element settings. You can go ahead and add class names that you want. If the class name already exists, you can click on the class name, and it also has the preview. So once you hover over a class name, it shows the preview in the preview area. So you can see how the class applies before you apply the class. Then let's say you want to style complex selectors. You don't want to style a class name, you want to style a complex selector. At the moment, you just go into the Navigator under Selectors, and you can now choose to style any selector you want. So for example, let's say I want to style the H1. So I click on the H1. Then I can now visually style my H1s. If you want to create complex selectors, you also have the option. As long as you are in that search, you're not only searching, you're also able to create selectors. So let's say I want to target maybe .test double column before. You see that doesn't exist. So I can now click on new, and that will now create a new selector for me. And the selector is immediately highlighted in the settings panel. So I can now go ahead and style that selector however I want. So you have ultimate freedom on what you want to do. And let's say you are building visually and there's an attribute or a property that doesn't exist in the visual builder currently. You can go down to the advanced tab. Then you see you want to add a new property, and there you can add whatever property you want, like inline size, and then you give it whatever value you want, and it will automatically apply. It will be stored here in the advanced tab, and it will also show up in code. So let's say I put it as 12 rem. If I now go into the code, you can see it's applied inline size 12 rem. So everything is always going to be applied and synced together. Down at the bottom, you have your power user footer, and that's where you get your custom CSS and custom JS editors. This is for where you want to add your own custom styles and scripts, but you don't want it to be used in the visual editor. So let's say you have like a custom carousel that has its custom JS or on custom CSS. You just copy the CSS and the JS into the custom CSS and the custom JS editors, and then that's where they will live. You can choose to add some conditions that they should only apply to the current template, or it should apply globally. You have the freedom. Then we have other options that are coming soon. We have dynamic data, which is GraphQL powered and allows you to use some complex dynamic data within the builder. Next, we have translations for multilingual languages. The accessibility tab is going to be used to help us to create accessibility fixes. in the builder, so it will give you some real-time suggestions. Then we have shortcuts and Sense AI for using the AI terminal within the builder. And then the other option that you may not notice is there's also an option to disable the highlight effect in the preview. So if I click on that button, now nothing happens in the builder. So let's say you don't want to be able to affect anything within the preview area, then you can disable the mouse effect, and that's it. Finally, let's talk about the Builderius dev to live workflow. So when you're happy with all of your edits in your Builderius workspace, you go ahead and click on the Save button. What this does is that it saves to the development branch, because Builderius uses a Git-like type of workflow where you have a development branch and a live branch. And then we have what are called releases, which are like Git-style save points. So let's go ahead and check out the releases. So I'll click on the file menu and then I'll go over to releases. That will take me to the releases page. And this is where you create sort of like save points in Builderius called releases. So for example, let's say I'm happy with all of the edits I've done in the builder. I can now go ahead and create a new release, and then I'll give it a version number for version control. Let's say 1.0.1 because it's a minor edit. And then let's say the tag is home update. And then I can give it some description. Say, okay, I added some extra content to the style guide. Then I can now choose exactly what I want to be contained within the release. Then finally, you can now decide, do you want this release to be shown to the public or you just want it to be like a save point? So if I say I want it to be shown to the public, I click on Publish Release and Create Release. And there we have it. This release is now going to be shown to the public. So there are two branches in Builderius. We have the development branch and the live branch. And you can quickly switch between these two branches by looking at the top bar in the admin bar. Right now we are in the development side version, and then we can go to the live side version when we are ready. Okay, so now looking at the columns within the releases view, we have the publish status, which basically tells us, are we taking the development to live or not? Then we have the version number, the tag that we just added, description, what is included in the release, when it was created, and then some actions. So some of the actions we can do are, we can now export this release into another website. So we to take all of the content and we can decide that, do we want to export it with even the content that we added, like our posts, our pages, our custom posts, and so on. We can choose to export all of that data together, or we can choose to export just the templates without the actual WordPress content. The other thing we can do is we can now pull from the release into the development branch using the check mark, that is work on this release. When you want to work on this release, what it does is that it now takes the version from the saved release and inputs it into the development branch. While the other button at the start is to move from the release into the live version, the last button is to move from the release into the development version. And yeah, that's the grand tour. I hope you now know where everything lives in the builder. In the next video, we'll start using the builder to build out an actual website. So thanks for watching. If this video has helped you out, please remember to leave a thumbs up and then write in the comments that the video actually helped you out. That will now give us the feedback that we are doing things right. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I'll see you in the builder.